Appreciate you joining me once again. The account we're going to be looking at today is the account of Joseph rising to power in Genesis chapter 41. Today's hymn is the hymn, Jesus is All the World to Me.
Jesus is all the world to me, my life, my joy, my all. He is my strength from day to day. Without him I would fall. When I am sad, to him I go. No other one can cheer me so. When I am sad, he makes me glad. He's my friend.
Jesus is all the world to me. As I said, the passage we're going to look at is the passage in Genesis chapter 41. And Genesis 41 begins with, of course, Joseph still being there in prison. At the end of 2 full years, Pharaoh has a dream. He stands by the river in the dream, and you have the 7 fine cows, and then you have the 7 gaunt cows. And he starts speaking to all of his wise men and his counselors, and no one can interpret it. And so finally, of course, the one that had been in prison with Joseph remembers after 2 years. And let's see, where we see that is around verse 9. The chief butler spoke to Pharaoh, and he says, I remember my faults this day, that he remembered what had happened, and now he remembers Joseph. Come down a little bit further as Joseph gives the interpretation, and you're going to have 7 good years, and then you're going to have 7 years, you're going to have 7 lean years. And the interpretation's given, Pharaoh, and the advice is given as well there in those verses. Verse 37 now, so the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand, put it on Joseph's hand, and he clothed him in garments of fine linen, put a gold chain around his neck, and he had him ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, bow the knee. So he set him over all the land of Egypt. I was thinking about the passage in the New Testament where Paul speaks about, I have learned how to be abased and I have learned how to abound. And when we see the Genesis passage with Joseph, and we think about Joseph rising to power, and after being abused by his own brothers, being sold to the Ishmaelites, being in Potiphar's house and being slandered and lied about, being thrown into prison, being in prison, and we've seen the Lord be with him every step of the way. And now it's almost like, okay, now Joseph is getting what he deserves. He's getting respect. He's getting all this, and we're glad for Joseph. We're glad for Joseph to be out of prison. But in thinking about learning how to abound, right? I've learned how to be abased. I've learned how to abound. I want you to consider just a few simple points. Pharaoh approves of Joseph, and he says it's good advice. And again, remember our hymn for the day. Jesus is all the world to me. And it's good when people approve of us. It's good when we get a promotion. But we are not justified by those things. Jesus is all the world to me. It's nice to have people's approval, but that does not mean we're doing the right thing. Jesus is all the world to me. And he's the one who we ultimately are serving, and he's the one who Joseph is ultimately serving. He's still, he's still a stranger in a strange land. So it's nice to have the king's approval, but it's better to have the Lord's approval. It's nice to be in a position where, as all bowed the knee to Joseph, save Pharaoh. It's nice to be it's nice to be in a position of authority, for lack of a better way of saying it. To have people under you, to have people respect you. That's wonderful. But Joseph still knows there's someone, even though he is high in authority, there's still someone who has more authority. And that's the Lord. To say nothing of Pharaoh, but ultimately it's the Lord. Pharaoh is also a man under authority. All who are in authority need to understand that, like Cornelius. I'm also a man, he understood the authority the Lord had. Not Cornelius, the centurion, pardon me, another centurion. He recognized the Lord's authority. And Joseph, he has authority, but there's someone with more authority. And so he's seeking the Lord's approval. Interpretations belong to God. And he recognizes the Lord's authority. And all of a sudden, you're going to have 7 years, 7 good years begin. And it's, when you have 7 years of prosperity, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But there's going to be 7 lean years. And that's when you start finding out. That's when you start finding out who your friends are. That's when you start, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. 7 good years, that would probably have its own, that may have its own temptations and trials. Because in 7 good years, it's real easy to think you're going to have 8 good years, 9 good years. It's real tempting to think, oh, the good years are going to go on forever. Like, nope, that is not the interpretation of the dreams. There's 7 good years, and you better start stockpiling. And you better start preparing for what's to come. And it'd be real easy to say, oh, we can just consume everything. Like, you better not consume everything. You better be prepared. Better be prepared for the future. And I was thinking about Jesus, and at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, he talks about who is wise and understanding. The wise man builds his house on the rock. Why? Because he knows what's coming. The floods, trials, tribulation, the fiery darts of the wicked, right? All of those things are coming. So you prepare for what's coming. And that's Joseph. Like, I'm glad you approve of me, Pharaoh, but I need the Lord's approval. I'm glad people are bowing the knee, but I bow the knee to God. And I'm glad we're going to have 7 good years, but we better get ready. That's Joseph. You have to learn how to be abased, and you have to learn how to abound. Jesus is all the world to me. It's all the world. So we have to make applications to our own lives, of course. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Please join us tomorrow for another portion of our daily praise.